Welcome to Cody in the Cinema. Today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about something that's really near and dear to my heart. That's Appalachian movies, cinema, the Appalachian region. And particularly movies that I believe you should watch, you definitely should watch, from the Criterion Collection. I grew up in the Appalachian Mountains, and I've seen very little good representation in media of the area. For reference, I've worked near it, gone to school there. I've seen coal mines, exhibition coal mines. I've run coal parts. I've been with a guy who ran coal parts and wrecked the vehicle running the coal parts. I've seen the desolate poverty. I've driven those back roads, those coal towns. I was sick recently, very sick, very, very ill. And this topic of all the things is kind of stuck to me a little bit. Listening to lots of Appalachian folklore and stories, and it's just been a lot of fun kind of getting back into that. And so, because of my background and because of my affinity for the subject matter, and also being someone who just really loves films, I thought it'd be a good time to share these three movies. Now, I've talked a little bit about some of it before, but I don't know if I've ever really let my heart out about it, and how I really feel about some of what's happened. So I want to talk first about maybe the most obvious Appalachian related Criterion movie, and that's Harlan County, USA. Now, if you haven't heard of this and you like documentary films, 1976, it's a documentary covering a strike. The filmmaker lived in the area, got to know folks. If you haven't heard about this and you like documentaries, it's an immediate buy. I don't know, even people that live in the Appalachian Mountains, I don't really know if some of them, if they know what some of these companies, these coal companies, did to people. Unimaginable, unspeakable evil. And this film covered a coal strike. Okay, it was in Kentucky, Harlan County. It won an Academy Award, and you start out the film with these beautiful shots of the mines and miners. You get some songs. You get lots of good folk music. If you're into that. And his old man talks about sitting on a porch, getting interviewed. He talks about this, this mule he's supposed to take care of. The boss man said, "Take care of this mule because, mule's expensive. I got to replace it. I got to buy a mule, to replace it." And he said, "Well, what about me? Well, I can always hire another man, but I got to buy a mule." And that whole moment of the film really sets that tone. It's a difficult, powerful film. And part of the reason it's difficult is it's not exactly this riveting narrative driven with a plot arc, nice neat plot diagram. It's watching people suffer, and as a result of coal companies, it's poverty. An example. There's a scene. This is one of the best documentary scenes I've ever seen. And there's this coal strike. There's a picket line, and these people they're in the road because they don't want scabs or people that the company has hired at a lower wage to break the strike and come in and work. And the police are there, and they're trying to, enforce whatever laws related to the road, or the miners say they're working for the company. Whatever the case is, the police are there. And sometimes there's shoving and pushing, and there's violence in the film, and it's something that I don't know how many Americans really realize, like, this stuff happened. And there's black lung in the film. You get to hear awful things that the company did to people. One piece of this that always stayed with me, some of the people in town would be like, "Well, if we pay the miners more, well, if something else is going to be raised in the store or whatever to pay for that increased wage. But the filmmaker noted, for example, that like Duke Power's, profits, they increased like 170% in a year, whereas the miners' wages only went up like 4%. Some of the math that will get shown to you, you can feel the immense greed. And if you're from the Appalachian area or any area that's really had any kind of labor-related struggle, this is going to speak to you a little bit. And I think you're going to enjoy it. I've not felt more uncomfortable in a documentary than I did with Harlan County, USA, except for maybe Shoah. I've not made it through Shoah, the Holocaust documentary. I've only made it 2 or 3 hours into that one. And for whatever reason, I think when you have an illness and you feel sick and you're kind of clawing for life a little bit, I mean, you think about things like this, where you grew up, where you came from, and what you're doing in life. And are you talking about movies, with some substance? I don't know. It's been a really, really interesting week. If any of you all ever feel like that, with an experience that is difficult in your life, you'll have to let me know in the comments, and how movies impact that experience. You'll have to let me know. Well, the other one, the second one out of the 3 I'm going to talk about, that's very related to this. If you haven't ever heard of it, if you've missed this, I did a whole video on this a while back, but this is called Mate 1. All right. Mate 1, I believe Winona Ryder had this film in a list that she really praised whenever she visited the Criterion Closet. Now, this is a story of another a union effort trying to be made in the 20s. And it's got a big cast. James Earl Jones, my favorite role of his, Chris Cooper, David Strathairn. I never quite get his name right. You'll know him when you see him if you haven't seen him before. The whole thing was shot in the New River Gorge area, to my understanding. So if you have ever had the chance to drive near Charleston, where the New River Gorge National Park, you can go to a ghost town called Thurmond. And I've been there 3 or 4 times. And that's where it was shot, and I instantly recognized that. Now, the first time I saw this was in college. And that film really influenced a lot of my interest in Appalachia. And I lived there, but then I knew about mining, but it just took that to another level. And it was filmed there. And I knew it instantly when I saw it, because I've been to that area so many times now. And there's another shot that I'm almost positive is taken from the Grandview area, which I've hiked around many times. The cinematography in this Union movie feels like the desperation of being poor in West Virginia. And it's both beautiful and haunting, and I don't know a better way to describe it. Because I have been around many poor coal towns. Mullins, Keystone, War, been to War, West Virginia. Just tons of them, And for whatever reason, the aesthetic in that film captured that so well. The acting's great in it. I think the position of a lot of the shots by the railroad tracks is important. It almost makes it feel like a Western, especially when we do get some of the violence. But James Earl Jones gives the best performance in that film, because he has to teach people that to the company, it doesn't matter what color you are, The company doesn't care. The company's using things like race to divide the workers. Chris Cooper talks about that too. And the people who come from Baldwin Felts, the detectives that work for the company, I mean, they're truly awful. They're awful. They're rude to everybody. They're just mean-spirited. I think I met one of those guys whenever I took that class in college. You know, it was crazy times. It is not a happy movie. It is not a pleasant movie a lot of the time, but it does have a good spirit of the people, well-written dialogue. I think you're going to enjoy Mate 1 if you haven't seen it. Another minor strike movie. But there's one more that is a little less themed. It's not themed the same way as this, not exactly. And I'll talk about this movie every chance I get. Talk about an uncomfortable movie. You know, Robert Mitchum, great Western actor, but his real performance that's going to just last through the centuries, if the earth lasts that long, is always going to be The Night of the Hunter, Harry Powell, the preacher. And I bring this up because this was set out of, what was it, Clarkville, West Virginia. And he's a preacher of sorts. Well, he says he's a preacher. And part of the point of the movie is that anybody can be a preacher if they say they are. Doesn't matter what their ethics are. Doesn't matter what their angle is. Doesn't matter if they're grifting. It doesn't matter if they're hurting anybody. They can just be a preacher because they say they are. They can say they're of God. They're a preacher. And he's in a prison, and he meets this fella who he knows. This fella has some gold, some money, of something like that. Oh, he wants it. So he gets out of prison, and he befriends the deceased man's family, and he blends into the community, and they fall for all his tricks and think he's a good, holy, righteous man. And he is just a perfectly drawn religious grifter who's also violent in this instance. And I can understand at the time why this movie was so unpopular, because it's uncomfortable. Because some of the characters in the film are hook, line, sinker for everything he does. They always make an excuse. Harry didn't mean to do this. Harry didn't mean to, it wasn't Harry. Couldn't have been. Someone skeptical? Nah. You got to believe old Harry. And the shots in the film are so beautiful. There's there's a shot in there on the river with these kids running from this preacher. That's so pretty. It's talked about all the time, and it's a funny movie. It's a really funny, the black comedy, and it's just hilarious. It's, especially when they get down in the basement and stuff, and then there's some creepy children's songs. It kind of feels a little bit like a nightmare that some demented Sunday school teacher would tell a group of kids to teach them hypocrisy. It's terrifying. A few other people come in here. I talk here sometimes about how much I like Shelley Winters in Winchester 73. She was great in that movie. She's really good in this movie. She's so passive. There's a terrifying claustrophobic scene with her in the room with Robert Mitchum, and he's overbearing. There's a great car in water that submerges in water. It's an endlessly rewatchable movie, and it's a shame that it wasn't better received at the time. Also, Lillian Gish is in it. But I encourage you, the Moundsville prison link to this film. If you haven't been to Moundsville and you're into prisons, or scary stuff, or paranormal stuff, or Appalachian stuff, or any of that, go to Moundsville. It's cool. They have another archaeological site nearby that I think you'll enjoy too. Go to Moundsville. I have a shirt somewhere. I couldn't find it. But, other place. So those are my 3 recommendations. And thanks for hanging with me here. And I hope you liked this. If you did and you want to click the like button, that would help grow the channel. That would be great. Consider subscribing if you haven't. I like to talk, just kind of talk a little bit about movies, Criterion movies, westerns. As you can see, I'm definitely into westerns. Thinking about watching Comanche Station later, the Bud Bedecker movie. Foreign films, A24, all kinds of stuff. Anyway, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on Cody in the Cinema.